Okay, good evening. We're going to call the Monday, June 18th Plan Commission meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Knox.
Here.
Commissioner Edel.
Present.
Commissioner Weber. Commissioner Jorgensen. Commissioner Voskel.
Here.
Commissioner Bruner.
Here.
Commissioner Markline.
Here.
5 present, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Second item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, which are under consent, and there are none to approve. Or, excuse me, there are. Excuse me. I went to the item number 3. I was so excited. So the approval of minutes fall under consent unless there's questions or comments from any Plan Commission members. Seeing none, those move on consent. Item number 3, approval of final plats and certified survey maps and easement releases. There are none for this particular meeting. Item number 4, set for public hearing, is a conditional use permit request to designate lots within the proposed plat of Redwood Terrace First Edition as appropriate for 2-family dwellings, and that's set for public hearing on July 2nd, 2018. Our first item under old business is a public hearing conditional use permit request to allow a duplex use at 483-485 North Walnut Street. And although there is a second item with the same address, we're going to address these individually for a procedural standpoint. So, Dwayne, are you taking the conditional use?
I will be, yes, thank you. Dwayne Sheriff, Planning Director for the City of Janesville. The subject property, which is located at 483-485 North Walnut, is currently zoned B2, which is a commercial shopping district in the City of Janesville. The B2 district allows business use on the main floor and a residential use on the second floor of properties that have a split residential commercial use in that district. The existing interior floor plan for the subject property is designed with an 1,800 square foot residence on the south side of the first floor and the entirety of the second floor. The business space located in the north half of the first floor is roughly 522 square feet in area. Based on this circumstance and the historical occupancy of the building, the property is recognized as a legal non-conforming use under the zoning ordinance. The petitioner would like to convert the retail space into a second dwelling unit within the building. Rezoning the property to R2, which is the limited residence district, is required in order for a conditional use permit to be granted for a 2-family structure.
Issues. Sorry about this, folks.
It's okay.
Testing? There you go. Thank you.
Can you read from the top, please? Report.
Start over?
Yeah.
Sure. We'll summarize. This request involves a conditional use permit for the property located at 483-485 North Walnut Street. The existing structure on the property is currently occupied with both a retail commercial use on a portion of the first floor and a residential use on the first and second floor and the balance of the building. The property owner and applicant is requesting to convert the retail use into a second dwelling unit on the site, which requires a rezoning of the property to the R2 limited residence district, as well as the issuance of a conditional use permit for the establishment of a 2-family dwelling on the subject property. Prior to the petitioner's ownership, the business space has been historically used for a combination of retail and neighborhood business uses, including a grocery store, a sporting goods store, a barber shop. The current owner purchased the property in January of this year and opened a specialty gift shop. However, the business wasn't as successful as she had originally hoped, and it closed essentially after 6 weeks. The most recent occupancy has been a photographer who rented the space from October of last fall through January of this year. The owner has since struggled to find a small business tenant for the space, and based on my knowledge of this property over the last 2 decades, that's been the case historically with this building. The surrounding neighborhood is primarily low-density residential, consisting of principally single-family homes. However, there are 7 business-zoned properties in the vicinity, mostly across the the street along Mineral Point Drive. The businesses consist of a vet clinic and a hair salon. However, 4 of the commercial properties do currently include residential occupancy. The property owner would again like to convert the building to a duplex by renovating the business space, which is located on the north half of the first floor, to an efficiency or studio type apartment. The building division has granted preliminary approval of the proposed floor plan in order to provide 2 exits to the building, and you can see on the floor plan sketch here on the overhead. 2 exits need to be provided to the outside. An exterior door to the garage must be installed in that location, and both tenants would have access to the garage as well as a basement stairwell to access electrical facilities and utilities in the lower level. The staff report that has been provided also includes an email from a property owner across the street, the owner of the beauty shop, located directly to the north. The ordinance requires that a 2-family structure provide a minimum of 4 off-street parking stalls. The owner across the street is requesting that the commission consider requiring more than the minimum number of required stalls, since Mineral Point is heavily traveled. Staff has conveyed to the current property owner, the applicant, that although the configuration of vehicles on the driveway may not be ideal, it does meet the minimum parking requirement. In addition, on-street parking is available along both Mineral Point as well as North Walnut Street. In good faith, however, the current property owner does intend to add an additional paved area to accommodate an additional parking stall. However, she has spoken with several contractors recently who are booked throughout 2018 and doesn't expect to do that in the near term. But would plan to pave it sometime next year. Staff's recommendation regarding the conditional use permit to establish a 2-family structure at the subject property is in support of that request. Staff recommends that after holding the required public hearing, the commission approve the request to establish a 2-family dwelling at 483-45 North Walnut, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, which require the rezoning of the property from B2 Community Shopping District to R2 Limited Residence District, that the site be developed in accordance with the site plan which is attached to our staff report, and that the interior renovation complies with all applicable local and building codes and permits in order for the work to be performed. And then finally, that included in the commission's recommendation that the commission find the proposal to substantially meet the conditional use provision criteria as listed under Section 3G of our staff report. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dwayne. Are there any questions from the commission members for Dwayne? Commissioner Markline?
Dwayne, there's nothing that would prohibit the applicant from renting out the larger unit right now, right?
There's nothing that would prohibit that?
I mean, that one's...
Correct.
It's only the efficiency that you can't live until you get occupancy?
Correct.
Okay. And the second one is, I appreciate the goodwill on adding extra parking, but that's not a requirement nor a recommendation of this proposal. Is that how I'm reading it?
That is correct.
Okay. So if the applicant decides to do it, good. If she decides not to do it, that's okay too.
Correct.
All right. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions of Dwayne? Okay, seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. If you choose to or wish to speak on this subject, you would just go to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and then you have your time to share your thoughts and concerns.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Reese. I live at 2020 Myra Avenue in Janesville, Wisconsin, and I'm here to answer any other questions you still may have about the duplex proposal.
I have a sense that Commissioner Markline might have a question.
So I was just going to say, you agree with the recommendations, the 3 recommendations the city has?
Yes, I do.
You're in favor of those. You understand that you can't have occupancy of the efficiency unit until the work
Correct.
is done. You get an occupancy permit. That's all I had.
Anyone else having questions of Ms. Reese? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No. Thank you for all your hard work on this.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak on the public hearing with the conditional use permit request to allow a duplex at 483, 485 North Walnut Street? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the commission? Commissioner Markline?
I'd make a motion to approve the conditional use permit to establish a two-family dwelling at 483, 485 North Walnut Street, subject to the three conditions listed on the Planning Division memorandum dated June 18, 2018. I would note once again, no occupancy of the efficiency unit till they get an occupancy permit, and make it clear that the extra parking would be not a requirement of this recommendation, which
I'll
we've
second that.
established.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Markline, a second by Commissioner Bruner. Commissioner Markline, any further comments?
I think this is a great use for this building, and it fits in with the neighborhood really well. So good luck with your project.
Commissioner Bruner?
No, I just agree with the Commissioner Markline. Probably the only other, I could make a comment in regarding the citizen that was concerned about the parking issue and traffic. I do concur and agree with the response by the parking department or traffic department,
City engineering, yes.
city engineering, in regards to parking on the street. Probably would have a tendency to slow traffic rather than to create a situation. And not only that, with the accident record at this particular location being extremely low and nothing really related to the parking, I just can't see a concern there. Thank you.
Okay. No further comments? There's a motion and a second. Please vote. And that motion passes. Okay, moving on to the second item of old business is the public hearing of rezoning of property located at 483, 485 North Walnut Street from B2 to R2. Brian?
Thank you. Brian Schweigel, Associate Planner. Could you move to the
I'll get it for you.
Thanks. Okay, so this request is to rezone the property that the Plan Commission just discussed, 483 and 485 North Walnut Street. The site's currently zoned B2 Community Shopping District, and the property owner has requested to rezone the property to R2 Limited General Residence District in order to allow the proposed conversion to a residential duplex. The property is located within a pocket of B2 zone property, surrounded by a larger low-density residential neighborhood. The other B2 properties in the vicinity include a hair salon, veterinary clinic, and non-conforming residential uses. The subject property appears to have been used simultaneously for residential and commercial purposes generally since its construction in 1938. Thanks. The comprehensive plan designates the subject property as appropriate for neighborhood commercial land uses. However, the plan also allows for departures from the designated future land uses for properties located on edges or transitional areas between future land uses. In this case, the subject property and the few other B2 zone properties are surrounded by a large expanse of low-density residential land uses and zoning classifications. Earlier this evening, the Plan Commission approved the specific details of the proposed two-family land use at the site. A two-family dwelling, as proposed, would not be permitted in the B2 district, and therefore the zoning classification must be changed in order to accommodate the proposed duplex. The Planning Division believes that the proposed zoning change is appropriate and recommends that following a public hearing, the Plan Commission forward the rezoning request to the City Council with a favorable recommendation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for me.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, Commissioner Markline? On this side.
A residential with an attached business on it isn't even allowed in a B2. It was the grandfathering way back when that allowed this property to be in the way that it is.
Yeah, it has to do with where the residential use is in the building. In the B2 district, you can have residences up above the second floor, but the way it's structured now with residential on the first and second floor attached to the commercial space, that's what would be permitted today.
So it's basically non-conforming now, as it was with a business.
Right.
And so, once we approve this, going back is not a feasible option.
Correct.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none right now. Thank you, Brian. Okay, at this time, I'll open the public hearing. The public hearing is open regarding the rezoning of property located at 483, 485 North Walnut Street from B2 to R2. Anyone wishing to speak on this would go to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. What are the wishes of the commission? Commissioner Markline?
I would make a motion that the Plan Commission sends a forward positive request to the City Council. I'm not being very eloquent, sorry. Send a positive request to the City Council on a rezoning request at 483, 485 North Walnut Street from B2 to R2.
There's a motion by Commissioner Markline. Is there a second? There is a second. Excuse me, I have something in my eye. Commissioner Markline, you have the floor.
I made my point, and it's clear that, you know, once we go forward with this, we can't go back.
Okay. Commissioner Knox, I apologize. I didn't say your second name
it's
for
okay.
the motion. Do you have any further?
Nothing further.
Okay. All right. Seeing that there is no other comment, there's a motion and a second. Please vote. And that motion passes. Just for clarification, when will this go to City Council?
The council meeting of July 9th.
July 9th. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. See you then.
All right, moving on to new business. The first item under new business is a preliminary plat of Redwood Terrace, the first edition.
Brian Schweigel, Associate Planner. The proposed plat represents a residential expansion of the Redwood Terrace subdivision. The plat area is located in the area west of South Terrace Street and south of West Burbank Avenue on the south side of the city. Next slide, please. The proposed plat would subdivide approximately 7.5 acres of land into 20 residential lots. The property is zoned R1, single-family and two-family residence district, and the comprehensive plan designates the site as appropriate for single-family residences with some duplexes. The applicant has also submitted a conditional use request to designate 2 lots within the plat for two-family construction, and the Plan Commission will separately review that request on July 2nd. If approved, the duplex lots would be reflected by the final plat. Next slide, please. The preliminary plat layout is consistent with the conceptual plan developed in conjunction with the initial plat of Redwood Terrace in 2007. At that time, a 3.1 acre parcel, and you can see it on the screen at the bottom of the plat here, right where the cursor is now, thanks Dwayne. That 3.1 acre parcel was conveyed as public greenbelt with the initial plat of Redwood Terrace, and this satisfies the parkland dedication requirements applicable to all phases of the subdivision, so no further conveyance is required at this time. Notes reflecting the existence and purpose of the public greenbelt must be added to the final plat. The plat currently designates the north-south roadway through the plat area as South Pearl Street. Staff recommend that this be changed so that First Street extends from South Terrace Street down to Redwood Drive. This modification is intended to reduce confusion with the other 3 street segments already named South Pearl Street and to facilitate emergency services response to the properties along the frontage. Staff also recommend a note on the final plat to restrict driveway access on lots 37 and 38 along Redwood Drive to maintain at least 30 feet from the edge of the Redwood Drive pavement. This will provide sufficient space for backing vehicles to exit each driveway without driving off the edge of the pavement and onto the neighboring undeveloped property to the west. The staff report also recommends standard conditions related to the establishment of easements, sidewalk construction, grading and drainage plan for the plat, and a memorandum of understanding executed between the city and the developer to provide for public improvements and special assessments associated with the proposed plat. The Planning Division recommends that the Plan Commission approve the preliminary plat subject to the conditions noted in the staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions of Brian? Commissioner Markline?
Just had a small one. Is there any houses in this area right now addressed to First Street?
There are. If you have the plat in front of you there,
Yeah.
there's lots 25 and 26 along the east side of this plat area. Lots 25 and 26 were both platted with the initial plat of Redwood Terrace in 2007, and both of those properties have addresses off of First Street,
Okay.
that stubbed First Street there.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. No further questions.
Oh, I do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner
Those
Udall.
lots 37 and 38 with the driveway, if they were not developed before, say, that site to the west there ever got developed, would that restriction be removed and where the driveways could be?
Yes, we would have the administrative ability to waive that requirement. The purpose for that requirement is in anticipation of the street not being extended at the time of building construction. So when the street is constructed, if those lots are still vacant, they would have greater flexibility with driveway location.
Any other further questions? I see Mr. Combs is here. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, just curious. What are the wishes of the commission? I was going to say, I'll make a motion
make it.
that the Plan Commission approve the preliminary plat of Redwood Terrace First Edition, subject to the following conditions on the memorandum dated June 18th, 2018.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Markline. I have no further comment.
I
Commissioner
just had
Markline?
one. And if, I looked at it four times before I realized it wasn't First Street. That's why I was asking if there was anybody addressed. I would say, let's change it to Fur Drive or Fur Way or something other than street, because I looked at the plat and I kept looking at First.
You
So
combined
I
the
could see
two
somebody
words.
combine, get confused on that somewhere down the road. That's all. I'm not changing anything.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Please vote. And that motion passes. Second item under new business is the architectural review of a shelter pavilion at Palmer Park Tennis Courts.
Good evening, Colin Slapak, Parks Director, City of Janesville. The Parks Division requests the Commission endorse the architectural review for the construction of a new shelter pavilion located at the Palmer Park Tennis Courts. The Parks Division proposes to construct a shelter as proposed by the Friends of Patrick Ryan, who passed away in May of 2016. The collaborators of the project met with the city park staff and wished to honor Mr. Ryan with a structure at the tennis courts. They used to be former Craig High School tennis players, and when they get back in the area, they go to the tennis courts and play on an occasion. So they thought it would be very fitting to honor Mr. Ryan with a structure. The park staff agreed with the proposal. We get complaints on a fairly regular basis of a lack of shade in that area. The pavilion would overlook courts 7, 8, and 9. However, all the tennis courts would be able to be viewed from that structure. State statutes require the location and the design of the public building to be referred to the Plan Commission for consideration and review before the building construction begins. The pavilion consists of approximately 1,200 square feet with a concrete base, metal roofing, and ADA accessible ramp. Structure would have a small memorial area for Patrick W. Ryan, should that be approved by the City Council at the next City Council meeting. All costs related to the building are proposed to be paid by the sponsoring group. Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee has reviewed this several times. First, as a project that to say if we should move forward with it from the park staff, and then also on the naming of the project. The pavilion has been professionally designed by Willis Pember Architects from Aspen, Colorado. He has tried to incorporate existing architectural features that are seen throughout the park, such as the limestone that's matched on all the pavilions in the park. Additionally, the monument walls with trellis plantings would break up the sight lines from the parking lot. The proposed project is consistent with several recommendations in the Parks and Open Space Plan, and staff finds the proposed architecture, placement, and construction of the tennis court pavilion to be appropriate as proposed in Palmer Park. We think that this would be a great enhancement to the park, and spectators and users of the tennis courts, we feel, would greatly appreciate this addition. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Colin. I actually have a question about, first of all, I think it's a great project, and I know you mentioned it's come to the advisory board a couple of times, so this has been a work of love in progress, so this is great to see it come to fruition. I just had a question regarding, there's an information station, and I guess that my question is that, tell me more about that.
Currently, we have a wood sign, metal glass piece that has reservations. Craig High School plays this day on these courts. Janesville Tennis Association is playing on this court on this day. Any information, upcoming events that may be taking place. So this board would replace that lackluster area, if you will.
Okay. And my follow-up question to that is, would your staff then be responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of the information that's on that particular board?
For the most part, most likely the recreation staff or the JTA.
Okay.
Usually the JTA takes care of a lot of that stuff
Okay.
on the information board.
Okay. The reason why I was asking, and certainly not, again, this has gone through a lot of thought and vetting, but one of the things I thought of would be, is this the right time to consider some sort of electronic message center type
Sure.
approach? So that would remove that needed, actually have to be there. Or if you do have that, if there'd be a way to put a QR so that, folks that like to use their phone could just download off of that. Just a thought. It was just something that, as I looked at it, but the structure, I think, is beautiful, and as you said, is something that has been mentioned for shade for quite some time. So thank you. Commissioner Markling?
Actually, do him
Oh,
first.
Commissioner Knox?
Just a quick question, Cullen. On the structure itself, I noticed there are benches and seating places. Are there cubbies, for lack of a better term, within these limestone structures, or is this for viewing only?
This is basically for viewing only.
Okay.
They did consider some storage, but the more they looked at it, they just wanted to concentrate on viewing and shade. And then, the storage, the small storage can be in the JTA hut or shed that's also on the property. And then players usually just throw their stuff out next to the court that they're playing on.
Right. Thanks.
Commissioner Markling?
In the location of this on the site plan, it appears that where this is going, there used to be handicap parking stalls. Will those be relocated somewhere else in the
They will be
area?
relocated. We looked at how many parking stalls there are, and we're within
Yeah.
code. So we'll just relocate those stalls.
You got plenty of parking spots. Just want to make sure that we didn't miss something in our review. Thank you.
Correct.
Yeah. And then, Colin, will this go, actually, Dwayne, on the 25th? Is it scheduled for the 25th council meeting?
It'll go the 25th for the naming. We wanted to get the naming portion done because of the 90-day wait period. So that'll go on the 25th, and then we'll bring it back for acceptance of the donation on July 9th.
Okay. Commissioner Bruner?
As I'm looking at the plan here too, I think it's a great project, and I like the design. As I'm looking at it, and I'm not a tennis player, so, but I see the visibility and the viewing area is really 7, 8, and 9. Your viewing of the other 6 courts isn't that great. Was there? No, this was basically the best location to try to do that, and I guess what I'm asking is, from a competitive situation, say high school competitions and stuff, do they use all the courts, or are 7, 8, and 9 the main courts used? Or, I mean, for my information, I guess for other citizens that don't know.
Sure. We did look at where would be the best spot to have this. And if you further to the west, so if we centered it on 7, 8, 9, and 4, 5, and 6, that starts getting into the hillside. And we felt that there was, with drainage and everything else, that was probably going to be a little bit more than what we wanted to get involved with, and probably cost also. So 7, 8, and 9 have traditionally been like the championship courts, if you will. That's where the varsity plays, and probably the higher level matches will take place on 7, 8, and 9. So
if you had an elimination tournament type of thing, and it got down to the finals or quarterfinals or something, or whatever it would be, it would probably be on 7, 8, and 9 then.
Correct.
You're saying?
Yep.
Okay. I was just curious as I was looking at it, being a non-tennis player, and okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I would say, as a parent of a tennis player, the space between the other courts is a very narrow space, and we're very comfortable putting our chairs between the two so we can watch both sides. The other thing, too, that I really like about this is upon the entrance of the parking lot is very long and, good size. I think this will be very nice to see at the end of the parking lot. It's a very nice structure, honoring someone. So I think the positioning of it is very nice just from when you enter into the facility itself. So, well done.
Okay.
All right, what are the wishes of the council, commission?
I'll make a motion to recommend the Plan Commission endorse the construction of a new shelter pavilion located at the Palmer Park tennis courts.
There's a motion by Commissioner Knox. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Bruner. Any further discussion, Commissioner Knox?
Just if you could send back to the Park and Recs Advisory Committee, job well done. I know they take their job seriously, and thank you.
Will do.
Commissioner Bruner?
No, thank you. I think it's a great project, and it's going to be a real addition to that area. So
Thank you.
I think it's a good project.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Please vote. And that motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, item number 7, the director's report.
Yes, thank you. 2 quick items to report. At the City Council's last meeting of June 11th, the council approved an ordinance to annex and zone property located at 2821 West Court Street. That was a single-family residence experiencing failed well and septic system issues. The council also approved a 2-lot certified survey map for Robert Kimball along Todd Drive. And lastly, one quick announcement. I think a meeting or two ago, I announced that one of our associate planners, Ryan Krazaz, had transitioned into the MPO coordinator position. And subsequently, Ryan has recently accepted a position in Minneapolis for a private planning firm. So we will continue the recruitment for the MPO coordinator, as well as the backfilling his position as associate planner. So we're actively involved in that process, and wish Ryan well, but hate to see him go. He's done a great job for us. But moving on for other opportunities that align with his personal life. So that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Any plan commission announcements from any commissioners? Seeing none, we're adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.